Good evening. Welcome to Artist Talk on Art on Monday, October 31st, 2022. I'm Doug Shear, President. Tonight, we feature appropriately a panel on the subject of the world-famous Greenwich Village Halloween Parade, which is getting to be a historic event. The panel will be moderated by photographer and NYU professor Lawrence Wheatman and feature Martha Lipton and photographic works also from Guy Lindsay, who I understand is being represented by Jennifer Lindsay tonight. Lawrence Wheatman is a regular member of our programming committee and has appeared on or moderated many panels with us. A little bit about Lawrence. He was born and raised in Washington Heights, Manhattan, New York City, and attended public schools. Although college-bound, his trajectory changed after being expelled from high school just 3 hours before graduation. That's an accomplishment. This was the Vietnam era, and apparently the organizational skills that he had employed to motivate students and faculty in anti-war and civil rights demonstrations were not appreciated. After hitchhiking for 3 years to North America, Wheatman returned to New York City and launched Cockroach Art, a 7,000 square foot performance coffee house across from the bitter end on Bleecker Street. The Art, also known as The Roach, traversed new ground in combining expression as diverse as rock and ballet, stand-up comedy, and kinetic sculpture using the same artistic space, and featured a number of known artists at the beginning and some at the end of their careers. Wheatman then performed with various bands in diverse musical genres in New York and in Europe, and all his original rock and roll group, Madison Avenue, was produced by the late Felix Pappalardi. The photographic experience came early to Wheatman in the many evenings he remembered spending with his father.
We just lost you.
Uh-oh. Hate that when that happens.
He froze.
Yeah, he froze. How do you unfreeze him?
That's on his end.
Yeah, that's just his Wi-Fi.
Well, anyway, so yes, indeed. So my dad built a darkroom into the kitchen, and I remember being 5 years old and getting up on my tippy toes to look directly into the tray and watch the prints develop, and it was exciting. And then as soon as I was old enough to carry a camera, my dad bought me a little brownie, and we went out in the street, and I shot the whole roll of film with 12 pictures. He showed me how to hold the camera, how to fire the frame up, how to fire the shutter. And we went upstairs and we processed the film right away, and we dried it and we cut it and we made contact prints out of it. And I looked at all the pictures, and every single picture looked exactly like a picture I'd seen in Life magazine over and over again. So I gave up. It was too boring, too easy. And then I picked it up. And when I was 28, I bought my first camera. And that a few years later allowed a transition from being a full-time musician into being a full-time photographer. But now I feel like I'm a full-time teacher because something that we touched on in our last time together a month ago, when we had Ilian Ivanov with us, who is as an artist, as a painter, he's a musician, does a lot of things, but one of the main things, the way he introduced himself to me was as a neuroscientist. And I had just spoken to a group of a couple hundred people, and I was talking about the importance of art in humanity, that it is the single most important thing we could possibly learn, that it is the number one thing that keeps us healthy, it keeps us happy, it keeps us connected to each other. And more than anything else, that the more art we look at, the more art we produce. You can just look at it, you can just produce it, you can both look at it and produce it. And it energizes the brain. We have so much evidence that this is so accurate that there's nothing that can be more helpful to us than to be associated with art. And, you know, a distinction I think is important to make when we're talking about art is that it's much bigger than art. When we are talking about it in terms of dictionary definitions, we have two definitions. I recall the very first one I read as a child in a condensed version of a dictionary was art is man-made and useless. And meanwhile, the economic definition of art is that it is the engine that drives society. In fact, the separation of art and science is something that's relatively new. As I understand it from a linguist that told me about this, so I believe it's true. Up until about 400 years ago, in almost every language in the world that existed at the time, the word used for art and the word used for science were the same words. And that the actual separation of those two actually came in the United States when in 1938, I believe it was, the choice was made to separate them, that they should be taught separately, not as one thing, which I'm sure would have probably irked Einstein, since he credited his violin for all of his breakthroughs. Or not, maybe not all of them, but he certainly credited his violin for the breakthrough of E equals MC squared. We've talked about that. In any case, I am going to share my screen. And we are going to get into this Halloween thing. And
Do you want, you're going to start with Guy's stuff?
Yeah.
You want to have Jenny do her little talking about him?
oh
first?
yeah, Jenny, why don't you tell us about Guy?
Well, yeah, let me do that.
Mhm.
Martha and I got together and wrote something that I thought was good. Imagine growing up in a house filled with music and art, where parties where people from all over the world would come to share their ideas and talents. Situated close to a university where both my parents taught, there were paintings, drawings, prints, and sculpture throughout, and a living room featuring 2 grand pianos and a harpsichord. It was a creative paradise. From the start, my brother Guy was good at everything. His drawings were intricate and remarkable when he was just a young kid. He was musically inclined as well and very gifted in that realm. When he moved into photography, I loved to sit in his darkroom and watch him work. I have always been in awe of my brother's talent.
There you go.
Gotcha. And I'm so sorry he couldn't make it tonight. I won't
Yeah.
ask what reason, because there doesn't have to be one. But let's go straight to our video. Screen sharing has failed to start. Please try again later.
Uh-oh.
Wow. All right, well. Fantastic. We expect these things, but not so quickly into the show. Hold on. Let me see if I come out of this. And I go there. That's where I was. Let me go back here. Go back to there. Try again here. Share.
Oh, yay.
Oh gosh! All right. Who would have thunk? In any case, so we have we are doing photorealism tonight, and which is in this case exploring the symbiotic relationship between photorealism and photography. And of course, it's the Greenwich Village Halloween Parade, and Guy Lindsay and Martha Lipton are going to be showing. And these artists have been chosen for their willingness to explore their decades past experience of a joint self-assignment attending the annual New York City Exhibitionists Extravaganza, known as the Greenwich Village Halloween Parade. And we have a a fun thing here that I learned how to do. But wait, there's more. It does that too. And to add to the question before it gets asked, these are mostly transparencies, Kodachrome and Ektachrome, plus a few C41 negatives, I think about 10 of those. All of them 35 millimeter and all exposed, did I get this right? Between the late 70s to the 1990s, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. Mhm.
And for this presentation, these images were all disinterred from decades of study. Your viewing pleasure. A work of art does not answer questions, it provokes them, and it is essential to mean, its essentials meaning is in the tension between the contradictory answers. In other words, it's the fun in life. Leonard Bernstein. And first, a discussion. I want to have this discussion first, if, and please, everybody can speak to this, just because Martha and I were talking and photorealism, and I suddenly realized I was confused. What is photorealism? And she gave me her opinion, which was contrary to mine, which is no big surprise because we are that way. And so I want to open it up with you. Would anybody want to just chime in and give me an answer? What is photorealism?
Cinema verite.
Cinema verite?
Yeah. Something I learned in college.
Uh-huh.
It's real. It means real photography. It means real film.
Okay, film. Okay. What else? What photorealism? Somebody else. Because that brings in a new thing to me. So
It's copying photographs.
copying photographs. Okay.
Okay, let's go to Google. Google says photorealism is a genre of art that encompasses painting, drawing, and other graphic media in which an artist studies a photograph and then attempts to reproduce the image as realistically as possible in another medium.
Okay. So here's why my question comes in, is because for centuries we've had artists that have used brushes that never saw a photograph because photography hadn't been invented, and weren't they doing photorealism? That's first off. That's the first part of the question.
You're a little muddled. You're
I
not clear. Yeah,
I will put headphones on.
thanks.
Thank
No, I think that you weren't talking into the microphone, and you also have this little monitor on the page with the little adjust image thing. Do you see that?
Yeah, that's weird. I don't have it on my, I see it on the extra screen now. Let me see if I
Okay.
can.
Yeah. Just,
Those painters who were doing realistic art before photography were doing, realistic art. They weren't considering, they weren't missing photography. They just didn't have it as an option.
that's great. Yeah.
That's an excellent point. I'm not sure if I'm back with you or not, am I? And I am.
If I can just add one thing, I used to be a photorealist illustrator in the olden days. And what they wanted me to do was they wanted me to copy photographs and make them look more perfect than what the actual photographed item was. To
Mhm.
me, photorealism
By retouching them, I guess, right?
No, I actually did these in pencil and watercolors and I mean, I was drawing these things.
But I think Doug's question is by retouching what you've done.
No, I was copying photographs of things and making them even more perfect than what the photograph was of a product or something like that. In
As a
other words, to me,
as a painter.
photorealism is, excuse me, please. Photorealism to me is sucking the life out of an item, an object, and just putting it there for you to see.
That's
It
rude.
has no, that's my feeling. At least it was true with I mean, it's just like people try to do photorealism and you look at it and you're sure it's a photograph until you go very closely to see it. And in fact, they're just replicating a photograph in another medium to make it look like a perfect photograph. So, I mean, that's.
Okay. Well, I think the artists among us
started.
I think the artists among us can agree. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
I switched
Yeah.
to this thing. If you gave 100 of the exact same brush with the and 100 sets of the exact same colors to 100 artists, you would not have two that look the same.
Correct.
All right. And the reason that I bring this up and talking about photorealism and what they were doing before photography was invented, et cetera, is because as most of you know, I've been teaching for decades, and one of the very first things I'm teaching in the very first class, and it's photography, is that my aim is to teach my students, and this is what I tell them, teach them how to use a camera like it's a paintbrush. I will hope that sometimes they wind up with photorealism because they're using a paintbrush that's a photography device. And that's why I'm bringing up this question. We don't need an answer to it. I'm not arguing. I'm just asking myself. So back to the brain thing, there is an increasing evidence in rehabilitation medicine and the field of neuroscience that art enhances brain function by impacting brainwave patterns, emotions, and the nervous system. Art can also raise serotonin levels. These benefits don't just come from making art, they also occur by experiencing it.
Right.
Art is not what you see, but what you make others see. Ego Degas.
Good.
Okay, Guy's originally from Binghamton. He's going to be our first artist up. And he first became interested in photography as a photo reporter and as a teenager in high school publications. And that led him to studying photojournalism at SUNY in Binghamton. And
highlight subjects.
I'm sorry. Oh, you might want to mute yourself if you're not talking to me.
Okay.
But keep your button handy because I want people to ask questions. Let's see. After he worked on catalogs. Oops, this isn't going to work. After joining American Society of Media Photographers, ad agencies has become his focus, in addition to working in stock photography involving subjects of travel and various New York City scenes, including obviously the Halloween Parade. Guy's series of portraits taken at the Greenwich Village Halloween Parades eventually led him to challenging yet greatly rewarding engagement with interior and architectural photography. In 1990, he moved to Connecticut and started a family, and he transitioned careers to landscaping and agriculture. But he made a point in writing to me that he happily turns to the iPhone for his photography pursuits, and I champion that because it's just another paintbrush. It's just smaller, and it's, you can still work with it. It's still you can fit in your pocket. I like that. And I picked this one as the first of Guy's pictures because I know it's happened to me multiple occasions when I have shown a photograph that I worked on in the darkroom to somebody, and they insisted no, it was Photoshop, even though Photoshop might not have been invented for 10 years, 20 years later. And this is sort of a case it was for me. I mean, I first saw this image, this Kodachrome image, and how did he get that face like that? That's all I have to say about this. And I'm trying to get the flavor of what it was back then, which was a little bit more relaxed than it is now. I actually have guests who were already there earlier today or an hour or two ago and came back here to relax a bit before going back there. They said that the police presence made it so
That's what kind of ruined it for me after a while, honestly.
yeah, oh exactly, yeah, same with me. I mean, I lived down the block and I wouldn't go because it was so difficult to manage it. There were a few things that I sort of left out of all these pictures that maybe I shouldn't have. They were more political things, somebody holding a sign or this, that, the other thing. And I wanted to go with what is, photorealism. I mean, really, this guy was in a little child's push thing here. I love the guy's peeking his face in on the top. I don't know if you can see that
Photobomb.
clearly though.
What a great costume.
That's me. People are having fun. I can tell. This outfit comes up twice, but two different people, slightly different, and two different people, and it seemed like different years because it was definitely different film quality. You'll see it coming up in a few frames. Jolly Green Giant, I assume. I mean, I look at these things and I go, what were these people thinking? I mean, I mean, why did she wear that on the left there? Oh, that's a regular face. Okay, got it. No, I'm sorry. I'm just making jokes. Is this a character that anybody recognizes? Is this some space age thing or a cartoon?
Never saw it before.
Yeah. By the way, this is true color. I was tried to get more detail out of this face, but whatever this person put on their face and on the skin was so radioactive that it burned right through the film. There is no more detail in this. This was hours of work to get this much out of his face. Is this guy dressed as a virus? I mean, is it? I mean, I know it's pens and not spikes. I love this.
But you didn't crop out the shoulder, the thing on the right.
I didn't crop out anything.
I know.
Why?
It just seems, just that sort of curvature thing there, on the outside.
It's a whole valley with hills and
Right. Okay.
mountains. It's natural. This is actually my favorite. I can't understand what I'm looking at or how this happened or what kind of exposure could have created this or what the lighting was. I've looked at this over and over again, zooming in on it, trying to get more out of it. It's almost like this is a painting.
Yeah. It's like the Blues Brothers on the right and, the Dumbledore on the left.
Exactly. And I think, yep, that's the last one. That's what we got from Guy. Do we have reaction from, was it Jennifer? I'm sorry, sister?
Here's what's amazing is I've never seen any of these slides or photographs ever in my life. I completely was out of the loop on all of this. I didn't live in New York City where he did, but wow, they're all pretty. I really like the one that you also liked, that last face. That it's indescribable what's on that face. I wonder if that he's even alive now after putting that on the face.
Indeed. The reason you didn't see this is because nobody's seen these for how long, Martha?
Like 30 or 40, 30 years maybe, since the 70s, 80s, 90s. So I mean, yeah, since
yeah, what a fun.
They've been hiding in a closet.
And were all of these hiding? Yours were also hiding in the same closet? Is that what I understood?
Most of these were hiding in my closet, and Guy was kind enough to send me some more that he had in his place.
Okay.
Jennifer, please thank Guy for allowing us to see those.
I,
And I hope he gets to see them at some point.
he will.
Okay, good. So now we get into Martha. A New York native, can't you tell by the way she sounds? Martha
Yeah.
Lipton avoided photography classes until her last year in college, where she was completing a degree in Romance languages, fine arts. And how many languages do you speak now?
A few.
Okay.
Let's go.
Drawing had her attention, yet when a Pentax fell into her lap, a love affair began. From the Village Voice to graphic designer, illustrator, creative director, the camera often played an important role in realizing many of her projects. Today, instead of making drawings that look like photos, she's more intrigued when the camera sees images as watercolors or paintings. And here we have a blank screen. But Roy, I must go to the parade. It's had to be the first one. And I would guess this is a little bit later. This is probably in the 80s already, because, or even the 90s perhaps, because I remember there being very few of these barricades the first few times I was there.
Right.
And people doing their makeup just to walk over to do it, to be part of it.
Yeah, it was, you capture all kinds of things when you're doing this, not just the people in the parade, but the people that are, just the whole, it's such an environment, it's such a thing.
Mm.
It's wonderful. It's such a vibe.
A vibe. I assume putting on makeup or eating something terrible. And for those of you in the audience 10 or more years younger than us, you might not remember Tylenol became associated with death, which makes perfect sense to go because Halloween's about death and blah, 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 blah. So it was interesting for me to come across this in your stuff here. I'm guessing this is probably late 70s, early 80s.
Honestly, I really don't remember. It's been sitting
Yeah.
in a closet for a long time, remember?
Gotcha. And I found so many people that put themselves inside of boxes in one or another way.
I love this picture.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like the Elvis is actually directly associated, but maybe I'm wrong. It just doesn't seem like he would be able to have what appears to be a large head,
Right.
attached to the guitar he's holding up. I mean, and that's a strung guitar. I mean,
I would imagine that they were together. That would, and this is of course Max Headroom.
Yep.
So this really dates it. Is this 80s or 90s? When was Max Headroom? 80s, I think.
I think it was 80s. Yeah.
The 80s.
But for those of you, again, you're a little bit younger than us, Max Headroom was a computer program that entered the early web and found himself sentient, and he would just run around the web trying to fix things.
Guess we could really use that again today, huh?
Yeah. Somebody else behind a box, sort of inside of a box.
Great.
And here's,
Oh, yeah.
but this is a different woman than it seems like the same, well, almost the same costume. I was comparing them back and forth. They're almost the same, but maybe they're different years, or two costumes made at the same time, or maybe
Different film.
or different film. It could be. Yes.
Well, if Guy shot one and I shot one, this is so funny. This is hysterical.
I have two of these. I love this one. This image, exactly with all these, how close they are together, and the faces and looking, and the hands coming up. And then we have this one.
Huh.
This one on the left is just, I'm in love. Probably a guy, of course, but that's beside it. Again, in a
Oh,
box.
wow, I love that.
Because it looks like a painting, Jenny, that's why. And so does this.
Yeah, this very much. I almost called you today because I've been looking at this and looking at this. I almost called you today to ask if this was perhaps one of your paintings that wound up in this pile, in this deck.
You can
But
see the
apparently it's
real eye, you can see the eye of the person behind there, but it looks like somebody's eyes behind some, a fabric or some kind of, art
Well,
piece.
yeah, that's what I meant.
A flat, looks like a flat painting with somebody, with the eyeballs cut out and someone's behind the painting, to me.
And at first I was thinking that this was just painted because how could the eye get like that? But forgetting that I'm a photographer and there's a good reason how the eye gets like that, because you were using flash. And when somebody's looking directly into into the camera and gets the flash, the light refracts off the back of the eyeball and comes back out again, and that gives you the red eyes. So yeah,
But this is all fabric that you're seeing in front of them, painted fabric, I think.
I understand, but not the eye.
No.
Am I right?
It's real, yeah, because you see the red eye.
That's why I'm saying that.
This is a cool one, though. I always
Ooh.
loved it. This was from the CD that you rescued.
Yes. Tell a story about that.
What's the story about that?
Well,
I found a CD with incredible images and I sort of gave it to Lawrence kind of after the fact. It's like, oh, I found this CD. And I knew it was from the 90s because it had pictures from a wedding that I shot and also music that I had produced in the late 90s, all on a CD. That, of course, you couldn't read because it was from the 90s and they didn't have the right, the ability to sort of read them anymore in the, in these 2020s. And Lawrence worked on it for a long time and was able to excavate these things and bring them out. And here is an example. He just loved every one of them. And he goes like, I can't have a show without these pictures.
I didn't say that, but I just, because all I could see was these little tiny thumbnails that were on the CD. There was, I guess, 12 of them or something like that. And they just looked so good. And I couldn't understand why we couldn't open them. I actually broke one computer in the process of opening these,
I didn't know that.
literally. And once I was able to get the files, then I couldn't open them because they're in some ancient file format. It took hours before we got these open.
It was just like the most fun night of the year for me. I mean, I just loved it. And I used to get dressed up, in my little outfit. And when you're dressed up and you're in, you can go throughout the entire parade and no one stops you. Unfortunately, these days, there are so many photographers that don't get dressed up. And it's really, it's kind of irritating. I kind of think if you're going to be in the parade, you should at least make some effort to put on a costume of some kind.
Ooh, that's a beautiful photograph.
Thank you.
What a handsome fella.
It was just the most fun night of the year. I always used to think that it was like the night that people come out as who they really are.
I have to tell you though, around here on, was it Saturday night or Friday night? Let me think now. It was nuts. It was outrageously nuts. There were literally thousands of primarily underage people, drunk as skunks, all over Midtown. And I was frightened for my life because they were running into the street, causing cars to almost crash into each other, almost drive up on the sidewalk right where I was. Yeah, it wasn't fun. Saturday night or Friday night. I can't remember. Somebody hiding behind a mask.
The puppets, and the floats and things that people put together are just amazing. They work on it almost all year, just like in Carnival in Brazil. This is sort of, the objective is to sort of be able to express themselves on Halloween. And it's amazing what the artists do. And the way it used to form, around Spring Street, and then they would walk up and there would, be all kinds of buildings, and there would be a spider that would come down on the library. I think it was near St. Vincent's Hospital. And then when it would wind around and end up in Washington Square Park, and on top of Washington Square, the arch, there would be a red devil. I mean, there was so much performance going on and so much interaction and so little presence of the police that people really, and we weren't afraid of terrorism in those days. Another
um,
one that looks like a painting.
Yeah,
mean,
this is
it's
probably my single favorite of all of these pictures. I love this. It's a
Paper
paper mache, I'm guessing, right?
I'm sorry.
I get the feeling it's paper mache.
Yeah, paper, yeah. But like I said, a lot of people were doing a lot of, puppetry and, this was coming out of Westbeth, which was the artist community in the West Village.
Still
And
is.
that would meet the whole entourage of the gay guys on Christopher Street. And then these two groups would sort of merge. And then the parade would just sort of wend its, I mean, it was an incredible, it was like a fantasy night. I mean, it was really incredible. And I used to try to situate myself near the samba band because I always like that good music, that good Brazilian music. And that, it was just a very uplifting and just sort of fantasy experience that you could sort of count on every year, Halloween. But after a while with the police presence and stuff, it just wasn't fun anymore. I mean,
This is probably my number 2 with all these.
just love those eyes peering out of that fabulous mask.
Mm.
Those blue eyes, gray eyes, whatever.
I can make them any color you want.
Right. No, whatever color they are is great.
These photographs are so good.
Thank you.
I gotta get back in costume here.
Are you ready for
Is that Paul McCartney on the left?
I don't think so.
Every time I look at it, I think he's Paul.
Yeah, there's a resemblance.
I bet we can think of him as perhaps doing such a thing, be able to go out in the town. I mean, what other time of the year could somebody pull that off?
Yeah. This is cool.
This guy wasn't in costume, by the way.
No, but maybe he's in Congress.
Converse. There was what was it? Converse and Keds, right? They were
Yep.
US Keds.
Yep.
Wow.
This is very reminiscent of what you'd find in Carnival in Brazil, I think. This kind of, or actually in Italy too. And this is like Chuck.
Excuse me. I love this guy.
Yeah.
I've never seen costumes this wonderful before.
Welcome to New York.
Yeah. Something that Martha knows, I was a little disappointed when I saw all these because my experience of going to the parade, and maybe it's just because I'm a guy, was I saw all these costumes, but I looked past them to the naked people. There was no naked people in here.
I gave you some naked people, but you probably didn't choose them. It wasn't my focus,
Yeah.
So here's one of the puppet.
Oh,
Ooh,
yeah.
nice.
On that last one, the teeth were actually lit up. I had to work hard to, yeah, they were just blaring out. Oh, not to say I've altered these pictures. I've only made them so that they, if there was something that just I knew a little bit of this or that could do something. And so I've done nothing to this, for example, just to make it clear. I love this guy.
Yeah, boy, I mean, that picture looks like a painting.
Yeah.
See, photorealism. It looks like a painting. It looks like, or maybe that's not photorealism, maybe that's oil painting realism, or that's painting realism, or it's funny. And this, I think we can I can easily imagine having seen this in a photorealist show that was all painting.
Right.
And in this case, I believe what's happening here is she's just got a mask on,
Plastic clear
a
mask.
plastic clear mask, right, and with additional makeup on it.
I think there's a little bit of makeup actually on the plastic clear mask with her face underneath it.
Right, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
I used to buy those. I loved masks.
Oh, oh, I never saw one, so.
Yeah.
Like that.
This is cool. You know, I haven't seen these in such a long time. We used to have slideshows years and years and years ago, but
Like Peter Gutman?
well, not like Peter Gutman. Those are more travel things, but you know, I've had slideshows of the work and, you know, here's a naked person almost.
Wow. That's really kind of grotesque.
I love this one.
Mhm.
I mean, this looks like a friendly fella. But he might have bad breath.
He looks like a goblin. I love this one.
Oh. So pretty.
Another almost naked one.
Well, just the whole,
Mhm.
you know, the guys coming out of the Christopher Street Parade joining the Westbeth Parade was just magical.
Mm.
Nothing
I-
political, huh?
Yeah, well, I was about to say, there was one, yeah, there's, I guess, yeah, I just couldn't,
Oh my God. Wow. Oh, look at that.
Now, this one I actually did forensics on because it bothered me so much. I couldn't figure out what we were looking at. The original looks exactly like this, but by using my digital tools, I did a deep dive into it, and I was able to see that the shoes you see in the bottom left are actually attached to a person whose collar is up there on the top, except that's not his collar, that's the top of his head. And his right arm is holding out that whatever, a flower or whatever, and his left hand is holding a head, which I assume, I mean, since it looks so real, it's probably, you know, somebody's head. But not his, because his is behind, is up there in the where you think the collar is. So here's a photographer dressed up.
Yeah, that's like I said, you know, that was nice.
But he didn't dress up the camera. He should have done that.
What can you do? At least he dressed himself up.
There we go.
Yeah.
Compromise. Great nails on this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the one thing I really discovered at the Halloween parade is the most beautiful women in the world are men. At least it was true in the, you know, in the 70s and 80s and stuff like that in the 90s.
Now, here's my kind of guy. Not. I wonder if he would have been as beautiful as her without all that stuff on his face. Oh, and this one, in case,
Boneheads.
yeah, well, one, but he's got the horn in his hand, and he's got the music attached to the horn. Was he playing? Do you recall this?
I would assume that if he had the music and the horn, he probably was playing. There were lots of people, lots of bands, you know, on trucks, on the street. I mean, it was a musical and visual extravaganza. Really,
Gotcha.
just. just the concepts that people would come up with. And there was usually, I mean, you're really not showing it here, but there was so much political and reactive, things to current events. I mean, the
Mhm.
artists certainly in Westbeth were very, very determined to let their thoughts be known and bring them out.
Mm.
And a lot of the gay guys did that also, but they were more interested in dressing up, beautifully and flouncing around. I mean, just it was incredible. Watching
And
these guys in high heels. I mean, I could never ever walk around and do what they did. And it was just always blew me away.
and this is curious too, because these guys are, it's obvious he's rolling a joint and, they're
think?
with help. Well, yeah, I think. And in New York at the time, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, that would have not been much of a big deal as long as you were white. But anywhere else in the country, somebody seeing this would think, oh, it can't be.
Fruit of the loom.
Yeah. Actually, I think her dress, just below this, I cropped this a bit, says Tropicana.
Okay, sorry.
Not that that means anything. And that's like a gun, some kind of a,
I don't know.
yeah. It was a toy that put people's eyes out, so they stopped making it.
Just so everybody knows, I had no idea which pictures Lawrence was going to choose for this. I just loaded him up with lots of stuff and let him be the curator. So these are his choices.
So if you don't like them, it's all my fault.
No. It's an interesting way that yeah, okay. So here.
Okay. And your aim when you did these pictures was really to give you some bases to work from, to
Spelled my
do.
name wrong. Martha Lipton's this.
I'm sorry.
It's funny.
I didn't mean
Anyway,
to.
I love the idea of, drawing from some of these images. So it was fun riding on the subway going downtown because you would see people all kinds of in
Now, what I find curious about this one is that since the conversation is about photorealism, her face looks so photographic. It's almost as if you painted on top of a photograph and left her.
This is all drawing.
I know that about you, but it just, if somebody didn't know you and didn't see any of your work before, that's what this kind of looks like.
This actually, I think I was drawing on rice paper, which is why it looks so crinkly.
Ah,
One of the,
and most of your work is kind of large, right? Or all of these, or
I don't know, 18 by 24, maybe. I mean, it varies,
well, because you have much larger pieces.
Yes, I've done really huge pieces, but none of these are huge pieces.
And all inspired from.
Yes, some from pictures that I photographed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just love it. And so I would take out aspects of the picture of the photograph, and then I would, just make it into something that was just interesting to me.
When did you make these drawings? I've never seen these.
Probably in the 80s and 90s, maybe. I mean, all this stuff is, in closets and drawers.
This one I had to just do a detail of. I just
Fantastic.
find this so fascinating.
I love this one. This is actually a large piece of paper where this clown is just off to one side. And I just love
Is it a black piece of paper?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
It's not, it's like more of I mean, you've really made it absolutely solid black. It's kind of, I like working on handmade paper because it was very imperfect. It was just, so there's much more tooth to the actual paper than what you've done here. You've really isolated the image, which is, it's beautiful and, like that, but I like working on paper. I'm a paper person more than a painting person, though. Okay, well, Marilyn usually showed up. This is all pastels and pretty much pastels. Yeah.
I mean, how you you know, I'm not a painter. I'm not, I don't work with my hands, and unless it's a mouse, you know, I work digitally all the time, but that's, in the darkroom, somehow that was never a problem, that I can't work with my hands, but the fact that I can do it, not do it with pencils or necessarily brushes or whatever, but can do it with a mouse more easily. But seeing these details that you're getting in here, I'm just fascinated by them. And here, the lack of detail makes it makes it so extraordinary.
Well, when I was doing a lot of photorealist stuff, sometimes I would, for example, there's a picture that I did of Balducci's, and it was the Balducci's in the bread section. So much detail in this thing that the way I dealt with the top of the, oh, this is a poem that I wrote. Should I stop talking about that and just say this, or?
Yeah,
This was
okay,
something that was really fun.
let's go back. Go ahead, you
okay.
finish that one.
No, I'm just
Balducci's.
So what I did was, because there was, you know, the bagels and the bread, and there was a fat lady in front of the bread counter, that I handled in the ceiling. They had boxes of panettone, and I actually sometimes just indicated where the boxes were in order to give you a break from the intense amount of detail that was all over them. I mean, it gave you some breathing space. So sometimes I liked working on a detail and then leaving some of the, you know, the rest of the picture kind of, you know, unfinished. I kind of like that finished, unfinished sort of balance in some of the drawings that I did, which was, I mean, other artists have done that as well. And it was just an interesting way to sort of focus on an aspect of something that you like and not have to sort of replicate it and turn it into a perfect photograph. But aspects of it are photographic, and the rest of it just becomes painterly in a sense. So
I hardly ever use Photoshop anymore, but when I was teaching it for 20 years or what have you, something that I noticed in myself and I noticed in my students was the temptation, or not even the temptation, it was almost an obsession to keep going, because you can make it even better, you can make it even better, you can make it even better. And then I saw a movie, 6 Degrees of Separation, and in it is Donald Sutherland, I think, plays an art dealer, an upscale Park Avenue art dealer. He only deals in paintings $1 million and up, and he's telling the story about how one day he went to pick up his young daughter from school. They were going away for a long weekend and they needed to catch a flight, and it had all been prearranged that he would show up and pick her up, and they'd go to the airport and meet the rest of the family there and get on whatever, and that it was very tightly timed. And he went there on the schedule, and and he says hello to the class, and he looks around and he walks out with the child, and he stops in his tracks outside the door, and he can't leave. He can't leave. He can't leave. He has to wait for the class to be over so he can walk back in and ask the teacher, how did you do it? How did you get these children to make these amazing artworks? Their use of empty space, their color palettes. How did you get them to not make them look childish? And she said, oh, it's easy. I just take them away from them before they ruin them. We too tend to ruin our own work I mean, in Photoshop, I often ruin my work by going too far. And I think that's probably something that occurs in a lot of the arts.
yes, I used to overwork stuff a lot, and it made me crazy. So it's hard to know when to stop, but it's, you know, it's better to stop before you go too far. So anyway, yes.
Yep.
So that
And
was,
whoops.
so the poem is the end of the thing.
Well, all of a sudden there we go.
So anyway, this was a party for the School of Visual Arts at the Barbat, a Halloween party that was really fun. And I just, again, Halloween really inspired me. So this was something that I wrote about Halloween. And I went with my cousin, and one of them was dressed up as Shakespeare, and the other one was dressed up as Cannabis C, and another guy was dressed up as Jesus. So this was the company that I was keeping when I went to the Barbat. So this is what it was. Dancing the night with Cannabis C. Howard Stern, you were there watching Jesus and me. Shakespeare took notes on a video cam, starring Ivory Rose in a rock and roll jam. Dame Cannabis shot footage while the bard did explore couplets and quatrains making love on the floor. And the bats in the rafters enjoyed watching the show, taking bites unexpected when the lights flickered low. Believe was just ending as we descended the stair. What's more apropos when Jesus is there? The crowd was amazed at this heavenly sight and we danced and he danced well into the night.
Great.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
And there's how you can contact Martha if you want to. And Phyllis, sorry, I didn't recognize you before. Maybe it was the costume. Maybe it was just because of old and decrepit.
Does
You're
anybody
mute.
have any questions or anything like that?
Yes, let's open it up. Who wants to talk?
No, you're wrong.
Hello, hello, hello. Anybody there?
Yes.
I've still got my presenter screen, so I can't see much of anything. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna switch over here. And then I'll be able to see us all. Whoops.
This was wonderful, very apropos for tonight. And do they still have a parade in Greenwich
Absolutely.
Village?
It's going on right
right
now. This is the first
Oh.
time in 2 years that they
Oh,
skipped it last 2 years.
right, but with the big police presence, is that what you were saying?
Yes, so apparently very big. I have guests here, and well, they're not here now because they went to the parade, but they had gone to the parade early, knowing that they should go early to be able to get in, and they
Okay.
spent hours without getting in.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, and they said didn't feel good, but they're going back. Good.
Do they corral them into a certain area the way they do on New Year's Eve at Times Square, where you get corralled into an area and you can't get out?
No, they just
Oh.
put barriers on the street
Oh.
where the marchers are gonna, where the parade is gonna be going up and around the streets. I'm not sure what the route is. Randy might know, actually. She's
Okay.
on here, Randy Berman. But anyway, I mean, so the barriers are there and they're doing it because they're really afraid of, the whole terrorist thing, obviously.
Right, well, that's very real now, unfortunately. But this was very wonderful, and it was very nice to see all those costumes.
I think I'm gonna jump in and thank everybody, and add that next Monday, the legacy of protest art,
Woo.
which is a little more serious perhaps, but could be interesting. I'm gonna be there.
Mhm.
I hope you will be. And thank you all for participating tonight.
Thank you, Doug, for having this
Thank you,
platform.
everybody, for coming to visit.
Yes,
Yeah, I thought it was fun.
Jenny, please say hi to Guy.
Okay.
yes, please,
Yes.
please, please. And I let him know that this will be up in 2 or 3 weeks, something like that, Doug?
Within 2 weeks.
And from Lisa also.
Yes, Lisa, hi. All right, good. Thank you all.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for
much.
coming, everybody.